Hello, Sharon. We were wondering if you could please identify yourself. We weren't expecting you, so we need to know who you are and possibly your address as well. If you
7 o'clock, so I guess we can start. Could I have a copy of the agenda?
Oh, good point.
Thank you. Okay, we'll bring the meeting to order. I would ask for a nomination to approve the agenda of this meeting. Seconded, so that's approved, and adoption of the minutes of the meeting of November 22nd, 2022. Okay. Approved, and we'll carry on with the presentation. Who's going to, are you going to, Yasmin, make the presentation? Okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
Not yet. So
I'm sorry, I've never been.
So tonight I am presenting on a Board of Variance appeal application for 484 Delora Drive. This application is requesting an increase to the maximum permitted height of a retaining wall from 1.2 meters to 4.8 meters. The subject property is located at 484 Delora Drive, close to the intersection of Wishart Road and Winthrop Road, and the property is zoned Comprehensive Development Zone CD 26. A very brief history of the development that took place on these lands that created the subdivision. The one aspect that is unique to this lot is that it's a very recent subdivision where the road, the Delora Road extension, as well as the Winthrop Road, were recently constructed. So this site was formerly a greenfield site that got developed to create 12 lots. The development of lands from greenfield to individual fee simple lots took a good number of years and included the involvement of city staff, developer, consultants, and the coordination of trades and construction company. The staff report includes a brief timeline of the main steps and the sequence of events that resulted in the approvals and permittings being issued for this property. Ultimately, when the foundation of the home was poured, it became apparent that there was quite a large discrepancy between the grades of the home and the road. The 2-meter grade difference would result in a steep driveway that would not offer the functional use, and neither would it meet the maximum permitted slope for a driveway, which is 15% grade as per the building bylaw. Ultimately, Mr. Lindstrom and Mrs. Sidhu are appealing to the boards on the grounds of hardship because the lot preparation and the existing foundation make it increasingly difficult for them to meet the city's regulations in terms of retaining wall and driveway grades. Additional modifications or the demolition of the existing foundation would not only cause a financial hardship, but the impact of the timeline for them to move into their home, which has already resulted in increasing stress and anguish. So the appeal before you tonight is for an increase to a retaining wall from 1.2 meters to 4.8 meters. The location of the retaining wall is along the northern property line on the front yard setback. Ultimately, when the Delora Road extension proceeds north of the site, the regrading necessary to accommodate that new road extension and future buildable lots to the north of this property will mean that the retaining wall will be effectively buried by the regrading necessary to make those buildable lots match the elevation of the road as designed to date.
Thank you. And is the applicant present? And would you like to make a presentation? Please go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. So it's just maybe more of just a statement as opposed to a presentation. So I just wanted to say good evening to the board variance members. I want to thank the City of Colwood staff for giving us an opportunity to speak tonight about our undue hardships. When we embarked on this journey over a year ago to build our blended family home, we never imagined we would be in this position we are in today. From the outset, we've had to navigate through many problems that we feel could have been preventable. The sad truth is that my family and I are the ones who shoulder all the negative outcomes. Delays on the build occurred from the start of the process. We were not aware of any discrepancy between the developer's plan and the civil plan. We were successful in securing our building permit early last year, which was drafted using elevations from the developer's plan. By August of 2022, we were finally able to get a basic foundation constructed. It was at this time that it was realized there was a large discrepancy between our approved plans and the municipal road that was put in place, as was just mentioned by Jasmine, so I apologize for the repeat in information. Unfortunately, to fund these delays, my family and I have had to prematurely sell our homes in Langford, become renters in Souk, and move away from our community. Sorry. The move out to Souk has added an additional 30+ minute commute to Victoria General Hospital, my place of work. Ultimately, we have a solution in place to move the build forward that we feel is acceptable, will have minimal to no impact on neighboring properties, and most importantly, will allow my mother-in-law to maintain a good quality of life. Once all of this is behind us, I feel that my family and I will be left to ponder the following question. What could we have done differently to prevent this situation when we followed due process? We are still looking forward to becoming citizens of Colwood and hope that today's decision will allow our dream to become a reality. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much. And is there anyone else who would like to speak to this application? Sir, come to the podium and state your name, please. Name and address, please.
Hello, my name is Tim Day. I live at 3546 Charnley, and I appreciate that you're sitting on a board of variance, but I think you're being put in a very difficult position that no one that is not trained should be put in. They're asking for an extremely tall wall, and the city has blocked it. They have people paid to look after this sort of an issue. Giving it to a board of variance makes no sense. I can't believe that you're both geotechnical engineers and able to understand what is being proposed here, but I've had a look at the drawing. There is no, it's a drawing. There is no engineering associated with it. There are a lot of engineering that's required for a retaining wall. The civil solution would be to build a concrete wall because the building department can look after that. They know the standards. That they don't follow the standards that City Hall is up to them, but it shouldn't be up to a board of variance to make a decision that will eventually impact their neighbors, because they're not, it's not going to be a vacant lot next door. And you're proposing almost a 5-meter wall without any engineering. It doesn't even give any specifications for the blocks that are being used other than they're made out of 20 MPa concrete. I don't think that's even allowed by building code. You couldn't put that in your house anywhere. I think it's MP3, MP30 for your foundation. And if it's a heavy driveway, it's 40. So I don't understand anything that's being presented to you. I don't see any information that's being presented to you. It's complex to engineer a wall of this sort. The drawing shows that the wall is vertical because it shows the top of the wall at being at the lot line. There needs to be at least material for the people that are supplying the blocks of what is involved in engineering one of their walls, because they may have specifications that have been approved. But to say that a geotechnical company can submit a drawing and then say that that's an engineered wall, there is no calculations shown to show that that's an engineered wall. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Grant, perhaps you would like to speak to these comments.
Yes, good evening. Apologies, I wish I was there in person tonight, but have to join virtually. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so before the applicants for the variance in front of you tonight get too far down the road, I wouldn't expect them to have engineering in place at this juncture, but certainly something that we would look for as the building department if this were approved. So absolutely, this wall would be would require to have an engineer, and a geotechnical company is able to provide that. But right now, I think you have a tentative drawing in front of you right now, and we would look for the actual proper engineering documents if this were approved. But I wouldn't expect the applicant to get too far down the road without that being approved.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this? Come forward, please, and state your name and address.
So welcome to, or hello to all. I'm Carrie. I'm one of the owners at 3494 Wishart Road. So I'd like to present some background information to start. I'll start out by mentioning that the developer of this project has dumped large boulders on our property on occasion, 4 times. One group of boulders arrived when they were blasting. Another group seems to have been pushed there by the retaining wall, off the retaining wall, the one that's on the eastern border, and they still haven't removed them. It's my understanding that the residents of 3500 Wishart Road were very concerned the developer was blasting so close to their well, and apparently he never responded to any of their requests to discuss the matter. The building crew also dumped building materials with nails in it on my property, and some more. That was in June of 2022, and they dumped some more in the last few weeks, and they still haven't cleaned them up. It's a problem because I have cats.
Excuse me, I'm
Sorry.
having a little trouble hearing you. Could you maybe move the microphone closer to your mouth or
Sure.
something? I'm having
Yeah.
difficulty.
So the dumping of the building materials, it's kind of unsafe for my pets, which could result in injuries. So they still haven't cleaned that up. So the developer also removed subsoil and topsoil from our property when they were excavating. And then they dumped some fill on our property so that they could drive an excavator on our property. They never consulted us. They never asked us for permission. That's a problem for me because I'm planning on building a fence, and it's the topography there now is just, it's not possible to build a fence. Obviously, they have a much, much more difficult situation than I have. And I did speak to one of the employees a few weeks ago about, because I wanted to build a fence, and he said he talked to his project manager and they've never gotten back to me. And I did wonder if it was clean fill that they put on our property, because the developer really hasn't met my minimum standards of good neighborliness. So I have my doubts whether it was clean or not. So I'm wondering if they're planning on building this retaining wall, are they going to be placing more fill on my property? They plan on driving heavy equipment on the property. Are they planning on asking my permission or giving us any written notice? And I found it sort of interesting that the geotechnical report, there's no mention of remediating our property after this project is complete. In note number 9 on the block design notes, it states that the discharge destination for stormwater is to be decided by others. So it's my hope that the water will be diverted into the storm drains rather than into our property or onto 3500 Wishart Road. So I have no intention of objecting to this variance at this point. But I'm just hoping that my concerns can be effectively addressed. So I'm wanting the stormwater to be diverted away from our property. And I'm hoping that they could remove, I know these people are different than the developer, but since the developers seems to be impossible to get an answer out of them, could the boulders be removed? Can the building materials be removed? Can they stop dumping things on our property? And I'm wondering, are they going to place clean fill afterwards to grade, just something that I can, so it's, I can fence it. And I just want one pickup truck load of topsoil because they took some of ours away, and that's all I have to say. Okay.
Thank you. I would remind the audience that this committee is dealing only with the variance before it, which is the height difference in the retaining wall, nothing else. And any other concerns regarding removal of other materials or such like should be taken to the town's building department. And if you haven't done that already, you should talk to them about what your concerns are. Okay, that's your avenue for this sort of thing. This committee is not responsible for that and won't be doing it. Okay, no crosstalk, please. Please direct your comments through the committee. If there's any other questions regarding anything other than this variance that's before us, they should be directed through the town. And if you haven't done that, you should obviously do that.
Yasmin was saying that, I think it was Yasmin that was saying, maybe it was Grant, someone was saying that the retaining wall, once it's built, and then when they presumably at some point Delore will be extended, they were saying that they would be filling up to the top of that 4.8 meter retaining wall. I think that would make our property a very steep slope and make it very difficult to develop. So I'm just wondering if that concern can be addressed or explain to me how that's going to work. Because just looking at eyeballing at it, it won't work. You know, raising our property up 4.8 meters.
So you're saying that your property would have to be raised?
That's what someone was saying here. I'm not sure who it was. Because they were saying that that retaining wall is going to be filled. There'll be fill there. So no one will ever even see it. But that doesn't make sense to me logistically or geographically. Or
so your property is a property directly north of
yes.
This property?
Yes.
Okay. Yasmin, would you like to talk about that?
Yeah. So perhaps this is one of the nuance of greenfield development.
Right.
So basically, when a new road is designed and constructed,
Right.
the grades of the property need to have a reference point that becomes the new road. And so the road is graded to accommodate certain engineering standards.
Mm-hmm.
And the regrading of the road means inherently a regrading of the adjacent lands to accommodate a build that is functional. So effectively, it will mean a regrading of the lands, much like these, the creation of the 1210 lots.
Yeah.
On 3510 Wishart, the lands didn't used to look anything like what they look like now. So there's a certain amount of blasting and cut and fill into the slope that will need to be brought in to accommodate the existing pre-established grade of the road, because we're meeting the LoRa as it comes from the top and the elevation that's already existing now through this development. Right. So that road will be designed to try and minimize the cut and fill, but knowing that we have to connect two pieces of road that are already established.
Right.
The elevation of the road is already pretty set in terms of how it's going to be backfilled
Right.
to create buildable lots.
Seems like a lot of fill. Like 4.8 meters of fill.
Yeah, it's
that's what they do.
It is unfortunately what it takes to develop on the hillside. There is a substantial amount of blasting and cut and fill. We're trying to apply these site adaptive planning principles to minimize that cut and fill.
Mhm.
But in this particular case, this was our first initial attempt at implementing some of those principles.
Mhm.
And we're fine tuning the approach of how we look at the balance of blasting and filling when we're also trying to accommodate requirements for the fire department and what the road standards that the city has in terms of how steep can it all become.
Mhm.
But we're actively working to understand how does the road grade impact the filling and retaining walls and all the pieces that come with development on the hillside.
All right, thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Sir, please come to the podium.
My name is Thomas Dayton. I'm a co-owner of 3494 Wishart Road with my sister and my brother. I live at 3376 Pattison, so I'm also a Colwood citizen. I have some concerns basically to just reiterate what Carrie said. I think the number one problem that happened here was the house that they built there was well above the grade. Like they didn't respect the natural grade of the land. Instead, they built the house up on an elevated platform that they formed by a hideous loose rock wall around the property, which does happen to hang out onto 3494. It doesn't respect the property line for one thing, and it's hideous as another. And now they have a house that is a huge amount above ground line, so that's why they need this huge fence. Well, had they built the house in the right place in the first place at a lower grade, it wouldn't be a problem. Well, the second question is the hideous rock wall that they've already built so that they could support the house is right out to the property line. So are they going to remove the hideous loose rock wall before they build a penitentiary type wall around the place? Or because as it is right now, they would have to build the rock wall on my property. Like there's no room for it. Like the house comes, was it 1.8 meters or something? The side of their house from the property line is not very far. And then beyond that, they have a rock wall that's made from blast rock and just loose boulders. And then the house is built on that platform. Well, of course they need a 16-foot high wall, like because of the way they did it. And to reiterate, Carrie, they haven't been very good neighbors. They've been leaving junk all over our property. So it's not like they've built any credibility with the neighbors through their actions. And several times I've asked them to move the darn rocks back off our property and they haven't done it. So it's not like they're a good neighbor, haven't been so far. And just using our land to dump their junk on is not really acceptable, especially when you ask them to remove it and they disregard your request. So I just wanted to bring the point up that no, they haven't been a very good neighbor. Otherwise, maybe we would be more supportive of what they want to do. But I think that's probably all I really wanted to say. But had they been better neighbors, we would be more amenable to riding along with what they're asking for. But when they continuously disrespect us, well, then you're not in a mood to acquiesce to their requests. And the size of the wall is just enormous. Like, was it 4.8 meters or something? Well, that's a ridiculously big wall. And if they wanted to put up such a huge wall, maybe they should have built the house a little bit further back so that they had room to process all that, rather than creating a problem that the rest of us have to absorb the pain for. Thank you very much.
Okay, is there someone online who would like to speak to this issue? Hello,
Hello.
go ahead, please.
Hello. Good evening, guys. I apologize if you can't hear me. I'm still fairly new to the Zoom functions. I just wanted to touch base regarding a couple of the issues that the neighbor there brought up. And I wanted to apologize if he felt
Excuse
in
me,
any way that.
could you give us your name and address for the record, please?
Yes. Sorry. My name is Hekmat Rashid. I'm a project manager for the builder that is actually building this property out. I live out in Saanich, 1549 Fremont. I'm just basically touching base on some of the issues that were brought up with the neighbor that spoke previous to me.
Okay, but please be advised that we're talking here just about the variance regarding the height of the wall. We're not talking
Okay.
about disputes with neighbors regarding anything else as far as this committee is concerned. So please keep your comments brief and to that point, if you would.
Yes, sir. The one point in particular that I wanted to address was that the wall itself was at no point in time on the neighbor's lot. It will be entirely in our own property. The same thing about the wall in the back that was mentioned as well. Both of these walls were entirely in our own property line. That was the one point that I wanted to address.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we've no one else online. There's no one else who hasn't spoken. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to address the comments made by the planner. The city of Colwood has a tremendous misunderstanding about rock walls and retaining walls in general, in that they do not acknowledge that there are standards for these things in BC set out by the ministry. That's all municipalities know, but Colwood ignores and then thinks they can hand them to a board of variance to approve structures that wouldn't be approved. And it's just, I don't know why staff can't work on this, why they can't prepare. And I looked at the topographical map that what's put on for the people that would just look at this thing. It's a plateau. I don't understand all the grading problems. The road appears to be at 93 meters or 103 or whatever it is, 93. And the other side is 94, one side is 92. So it looks from the original topographical map, there should have been 1 meter to each road. So I don't understand about the city designing a road other than they approved the other end of Dora Road, and it's a staff thing to hook up the two pieces of the road. There's no application to hook up the two pieces of road, so that other people must suffer now because of a lack of foresight and effort by staff is just not right.
Thank you. Mr. Grant, any further comments?
Unless the board has any specific questions, I can say with confidence that there are engineers involved and we will scrutinize that if the application was approved tonight, and I trust their integrity. But as far as the stormwater goes, it would not be permitted to run off site. So the building department would find a means to terminate that within our bylaw. But happy to answer any questions the board may have.
And Mr. Grant, may I assume that if this application were approved, that any wall that were built would be built according to all of the applicable municipal and provincial guidelines?
Yep, the wall in question, and thank you for the question, the wall in question falls outside parameters of the BC building code, and then it's with the engineers that are involved at that point and their standards that go along with it. So there are definitely other examples of walls with the same material and similar heights in the area, not in Colwood specifically, but not concerned with the engineering end of things from a building standpoint.
Thank you.
Mr. Grant, do you have confirmation that the wall is on the right property here, as the neighbor's concerned it's on the north property?
The variance that is before you tonight, obviously the wall hasn't been built yet, but as far as the other walls that were mentioned, I'm unable to confirm that. I haven't seen a survey yet if those boulder walls that were mentioned earlier are on the property or not. But I know the wall that we're discussing tonight.
Can I offer some insight? So we have a survey of the property, and the walls are located within the private property of the lot in question. I would also like to bring your attention to Appendix 4. Appendix 4 is an engineering sealed and signed drawing that includes the design of the retaining wall. So perhaps it's just Byron hasn't had an opportunity to review Appendix 4 because this submission is made to the Board of Variance. It's not a submission for a building permit application yet, but Appendix 4 has the sealed signature and permit number of a geotechnical engineer that is putting their seal of approval on the engineering behind this submission. This is RISAC Geotechnical Engineering, and this is the quality of standard of submission that we ask for us to get confirmation that it has been vetted by a professional that is giving a seal of approval to the design proposed. And it is located within private property within the lot in question. And we do have a survey of the property as part of the submission from the applicant. I don't believe it is included here, but we do definitely have confirmation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Board, if I may add to that, sorry. I did see the geotech report on the wall, and then as far as that would be concerned, we do require more stringent paperwork when it comes to if this were to be approved. We require what are referred to as letters of assurance, which the engineer would submit to show that they're taking on the project, and then in turn a closing letter of assurance when the project has been completed and reviewed.
Thank you. I have a question of the applicants. I'm confused as exactly how this project is going to go forward regarding the difference in elevation between the road and the actual building. If you're going to dump a bunch of fill in there and support it by a wall, which I understand is what's happening, it still looks as if it's awfully steep to get into the garage. Are you raising the elevation of the existing foundation? Because that wasn't clear in the application.
Yes, we are raising the foundation. I believe it's one meter in height. So it has the main floor elevation of 114.5 to come in at the road. Just based off of all the issues we'd had previously, we wanted to make sure that we can pass the grades because there was also issues with driveway slope with the bylaws. And so we felt that this was probably, and in consultation with city staff, this would be the best way to kind of move forward, would be to crib the foundation and raise it.
Thank you. And Yasmin, you can clarify this for me too. Is that raising of the foundation require an additional variance, or can that be done without a variance?
So we don't have any regulations that restrict the depth of a foundation, or so it does not require a variance.
Thank you. Any questions?
The overall height of the building is going to be maintained within the limits?
Yes, the overall height of the building will stay within the permitted height for the CD 26 zone, 2-story. It'll be a 2-story home.
Thank you. Okay, no one else on the line that wishes to speak to this application? Okay, we're going to close the public participation part of this meeting, and we're going to discuss it amongst the committee members. Okay. We have some concerns regarding this application because of the fact that the amount of the increase is maybe could not be described as a minor variance. It might be a major variance. And perhaps that's not within the ability of this committee to handle on a normal basis. But given that the city is in approval of this application and the fact that, as I understand it, the wall in future would basically be buried by future construction. Is that correct? I think we can consider that in this circumstance anyway, it is a minor variance. Do we have a recommendation?
I propose to approve the variance.
I agree with the approval. The application is approved. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other orders of business as far as this meeting is concerned?
No,